Some Sunday morning thoughts after 9 out of the 12 Champions Cup games so far this weekend. Yeah, just some overall thoughts on round one. I'll dig a little bit into each of the games we've seen so far, which started on Friday night, and then 8 games on Saturday. I was working at one of them in Northampton, but I've caught up with the rest, and I'm going to give you some thoughts on this video. Do you know what would really help? Because I want this competition to be as popular as it can be. And actually, the opening round of games, I think, is really, really promising so far for this competition. So just give the video a thumbs up. That really helps spread the word. Leave your comment down below as well. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. We've seen, and here are the results from Saturday. Obviously, La Rochelle got the win in Bath on Friday night. A great result for them. And that was one of the predictions I got incorrect. Although I did say it would be either way and in the balance, and there would be one score in it. So La Rochelle by 4 was a little bit right, but I did say Bath by 2. But then again, I also predicted the Sharks would win by 18 points, and the Sharks won by 18 points. But then the Stormers and the Bulls brought me back down to earth. I predicted wins for them as well, and Toulon and Saracens put me in my place on that one. And with Toulon, that was an example of a French team winning on the road, very un-French typically, and that was good to see. But there's lots of other talking points besides. So yeah, let me get into it without further ado. Your thoughts, as I say, down below. We all got underway in this round on Friday night in Bath. Absolutely horrendous conditions. And that's one of the stories of the weekend. Tell you what, it makes me think summer rugby's not such a bad idea. Watching the howling wind, the rain. I mean, the dead ball area, the in-goal area at the Rec in Bath. I'm assuming that pigs live there in the week when they're not playing rugby. It's horrendous. The conditions were awful. And La Rochelle just played those conditions much better in the end. The first half performance from them won it. They were 21-6 up at half-time. 3 well-worked tries off the training pitch in some cases. The maul and the line-out coming to the fore. And when the conditions are as bad as they were, a strong set piece is really important. I do think that the conditions sort of pulled Bath into a little bit of an arm wrestle that they wouldn't have wanted to have been in. Actually, Finn Russell did play quite a good game. Will Muir looked good for Bath. I think hooker is an area of weakness for Bath, and that was an area of strength for La Rochelle. Jegu and Aldrit in the pack were excellent, and Kerbarlo was the player of the match, and it was a moment of inspiration from him that scored a great try. And I think Bath will be disappointed. The condition, it was always going to be tight, but the conditions made it even more of a lottery. And I probably tells you a little bit about where the two leagues are at, the Premiership and the top 14. The top 14's 6th place, so like a mid-table team at the minute in La Rochelle, beat away from home the top of the Premiership and the favourites to win the title. And as I say, the conditions played into that, but that probably tells you a little bit about where the budgets are in the Premiership. The Premiership cannot cover all bases because of the salary cap being much lower than the French one. I do think that the coaching in the Premiership is seriously good as a result, because they managed to get that close to teams with much bigger budgets, because the coaching is one area that's outside of the salary cap. So the Premiership do that particularly well, and Johan van Graan has done a good job at Bath, but they get the bonus point, losing bonus point, putting themselves under pressure now, going away from home. But La Rochelle, that's a big win for them. And that got us underway on Friday night. Much better weather in Durban. And I tell you what, watching this game just made me hanker for KwaZulu-Natal. I wanted a bunny chow. I wanted to go and have another curry. Best curry I've ever had in my life was in Durban. And yeah, I had the best time ever at Kings Park earlier this year. And some people were watching it on television and saying, where's all the crowd? Why aren't there anyone? And I know from having been at Kings Park, well, it was hot and I was there in the South African winter. So it must have been proper hot. So I'm not surprised everyone was sat in the shade on the side of the stadium where the cameras were. I mean, also, that game was like 3 in the afternoon, South African time. That must have been just so hot. The heat definitely got to the brains of some of the rugby players on the pitch on both teams. There was just insane things going on. It was brutal, this match. It was nuts. The referee, basically, as well, I think he got a heat stroke in the first half because he just let everything go. There was a clear forward pass for that Sharks' first try from Oxenche, and he just, well, nah, I'm not going to bother. I think the TMO just had passed out with heat stroke as well. But then they picked up on everything in the second half, and it was more cards than Christmas. in the second half. But nevertheless, despite the Sharks being down to 12 men at one point, and it should have been 11. I mean, there was deliberate knock-ons going on. I mean, there probably should have been more cards dished out in that second half, but it wouldn't have mattered because I reckon Sharks could have been down to 5 players, and Exeter still wouldn't have been able to score a try. Low IQ stuff from them, and they'll be so disappointed they didn't come away with at least the losing bonus point. But the Sharks, when they do actually click, are just dynamite. That, I mean, forward pass aside, that first try from Buthelezi was absolutely insane. Fassi is just wild rugby player. Mapimpi looked on it. Captain Khaleesi was just had the bit between his teeth in this one. Hoping the injuries aren't too bad. There was a few of them in this game. Etzebeth went down, Fassi, Sichuka and Fenter as well. Exeter got the first try, but really sloppy attack from them. Not being able, especially, not being able to find the holes. And I guess from the Sharks' point of view, full 5 points from them at home is massive. They are going to need to get a bit more impact from their bench. When it comes to the bigger teams in knockout games, then they're going to need a full 23-man squad. It feels like their starting 15 is great, but the bench not so much. Sharks have got a real opportunity to get a high seeding in the knockouts, and I think getting home matches is absolutely massive for them. So they need to go for it. They've got the full 5 points there. Clermont as well, the full 5 points. I mean, I've only watched the highlights of this one because I was working at the Northampton v Clermont game, which was on at the same time. Or was the Clermont game the early kickoff? No, the Clermont game was the early kickoff, wasn't it? When I was watching Sharks v Exeter, so I couldn't watch both. Anyway, I was at Northampton Saints when I was watching the Sharks game. Clermont, I mean, if Benetton didn't seem to be bothered to turn up, so I'm not going to go back and watch the full game. 28-0, 4 tries, 2 for Patheliato from close range, 2 maul tries as well that they were on the back of. The big men for Clermont just did the job. Benetton had a stacked team full of Italian internationals, but it wasn't enough for the big juggernaut of a Clermont pack. They didn't even need to get their fast guys into the game, and they've got a few. Have Clermont. So 28-0 regulation win. I mean, you don't often see a team getting 0. That's disappointing from Benetton. They're not having a good year, are they? 38-8. I was at this game. I worked at this match. It was biblically bad conditions, but that kid, 19 years of age, my goodness me. First time I've actually been in a stadium and watched Henry Pollock live. I've watched him on the telly a few times. He's a special player. Special talent. I'm fully on board the Henry Pollock hype train at this point. Although, and I mean this in a good way, I think Henry Pollock is fully on board the Henry Pollock hype train. He walks around with this swagger, like he knows he's good. And I kind of like that arrogance. I can see why it would annoy other people. And he has a little bit of that. And thinking of the Sharks hooker, Bongi and Banambi and Oxenche, in the Chasing the Sun 2 documentary, they talk about English players celebrating knock-ons and things. And what did Bongi and Banambi call it? Plastic energy. Henry Pollock's got a bit of that plastic energy going on. He's sort of jumping around and when the opposition knock on. I can't help but like that amount of confidence in a 19-year-old kid. Maybe he needs to temper it a little bit, but he's backing it up with his performances on the pitch. Him and Joano Augustus were massive. Saints really were always on top and scored 6 tries in awful conditions. Castres were dreadful. Really, really bad. A prime example, they had the wind behind them in the first half. They got a penalty inside their own half and they tapped and went quickly, not kick with a massive wind for touch. And then 2 phases later, they kick it to Northampton anyway. It just they were not good. But they've lost every single game away and they've won every single game at home. They're so French. Stormers were very, very Stormers. But hey, I say French being French, Toulon won away from home, and they won away from home without a bunch of their frontline players. There was no Charles Olivon, there was no Abadi, there was a few other, I can't remember the names now. It doesn't matter. some of their big guns were not there in the lineup for Toulon. That said, Stormers, you could see they were without Malherbe, Ruiz, Fourie, Willemse, Sacha, Dan Duplessis. They were missing a bunch of players as well, and it told in the end. But really, I guess when you actually look at this, yeah, the Stormers lacked a bit of depth, and that is something that you can put right across the South African teams. I'll come to the Bulls in a minute, but the Sharks lack a bit of depth on the bench, although they've got an amazing starting 15. When everyone's fit for the Stormers, they're gonna be amazing. But do they have a full 23, and do they have a 30 odd man squad that can battle on the URC front and in the Champions Cup front this season? That's a big question mark there. Again, I thought having home advantage was going to be massively important for Stormers. They took this one to Port Elizabeth. It looked like the crowd absolutely lapped it up there, but they did not get the win, and that's a hammer blow. It's going to be interesting to see what team Stormers take to West London to play against Harlequins next week. I will be working at that game, by the way. So I'm hoping that the Stormers bring a stacked team and come for the win. Gabin Villiers, he was one French international who was involved in the November test, who did play for Toulon, and he was absolutely brilliant. His try to get things started, it started with an offload from him, finished with him scoring in the corner, but probably the most important intervention he had in the match was in the second half, when he absolutely annihilated Marnie Libok with a totally legal, and there were lots of very illegal hits in this game as much as anything, but that was a completely legal shot. Just hammered Libok, ball spilled free, and Baptiste Saram went through and scored what was the decisive moment in the match. More cards than Christmas, and the red card was redder than Santa Claus in this one, to be honest. Stormers, just following Stormers must be an emotional roller coaster. They're 14-10 up at half time. Dweber is chucking his arrows straight as a die. Libok's knocking over his conversions even from the touchline. No points in the second half. Stormers didn't concede when they had, William Engelbrecht was in the bin. And they didn't concede with 14 men. And also the Stormers didn't score when Toulon were down to 13 men. It must just have you, I can understand why you must just scratch your head if you're a Stormers fan. Disappointing result for them. Not even the losing bonus point. So they get 0 points at home. Munster. This is Munster, who've had a difficult time in the URC. They've been gathering a bit of momentum, but there's something about Munster and this competition which just feels right. It just works. I've been in Thomond Park many times for big Champions Cup games, and it just gets the crowd out in force, the noise is up, the energy's there, and they absolutely dominated Stade Francais. Again, I talked about the red card in the previous game. This game probably should have had 4 red cards. 2 were dished out, both to Stade Francais. Discipline was horrendous. The brutality was peak, and this felt like a Heineken Cup game from the 2000s. It just had edge. It felt like it's amazing actually that the amount of brutality there is on a rugby pitch, and it never results in punches. It felt like one of those days 20 years ago where it would have been an all-out 30-man brawl. There was edge on this one, and I mean the two absolutely stone-cold red cards. Nankervel for Munster probably should have got the first red card of the day in the first half. He got a yellow card for what was quite a dangerous high tackle, but there should have been another red card for Stade Francais later on. It was nuts. But some of the tries that Munster scored were excellent. They actually only scored 5 points when they were up 2 men. It's something weird. A theme across the weekend is defence is doing really well or attack's doing really badly when there's like 2 or more men off the field. Shane Daly's footballing skills for his try on his 100th cap for Munster, that was a special moment. Craig Casey with a bit of opportunism down the blind side led to that first try. A maul try, Ken Dellen on the end of that one. And the WWE finishing move on Craig Casey, that's what led to the second red card, didn't it? Stade Francais actually scored when they had 13 men, and then Gavin Coombs finished it off. 5 points for Munster. They love this competition. And then, well, another South African team that did not do as well as my predictions. I thought this would be tight, and I thought it could go either way. Saracens could win it, but I plumped for the Bulls by 4. I thought because they'd been in the UK and Ireland, they were in Connacht last weekend, they were acclimatised. A lot of their international players were picked. But guys like Moody, Van Staden, didn't look like internationals in this game. And I mean, 70 minutes of the match, Bulls didn't score a point. They went up early, got a try, got a penalty, and then that was it for the Bulls for the rest of the day. And I think they lost it in the first half, or Saracens won it in the first half. Their defence and their game management with the wind was much, much better than the Bulls. The Bulls were just naive. I don't know why they didn't just put their boot through the ball more in that first half when they had a massive tailwind behind them. But they didn't. I thought Ursen just did not manage the game very well at all. And to be up, well, no, it was 8-5 at half time, wasn't it? To be up by only 3 points at half time, nothing like enough. And it was a demolition in the second half. 3 tries and just smart play from Saracens. Their game management was much, much better. Fergus Burke's growing into his jersey. Tom Willis was massive again. Big statement to Steve Borthwick with that performance. More cards as well. 2 for the Bulls. I don't know what it is. It's like the teams in the Champions Cup are trying to collect cards like they're playing Pokemon or something. The Bulls' scrum was good, but the line out for Saracens was better than the Bulls. And I did talk about this in the preview. I was looking at the selection and going, Ben Earl on the bench. And I did say, I think it might be so that you've got McFarland, Ezekwe, Itoji, and Juan Martin Gonzalez on the pitch at the same time. That's 4 line-out jumpers. And they absolutely wrecked the Bulls' line-out. Maro Itoji may be the best line-out defensively. He might be the best defensive line-out player just for his sacking of the mauls as well. He is world-class at that. He really is. Should the Bulls have taken points when they were on offer in the first half? Should you take 3 points? Did they get caught into the trap of trying to go for 7 every time? And this is cup rugby. That said, Saracens did score some very, very good tries in the end and deserved their win. And to the 2 late kickoffs then. Starting at Scotstoun, where it was a convincing statement 38-17 performance by the URC champions, who, again, Glasgow, they are... I think they're one of the teams, you think the 2 clear favourites are Leinster and Toulouse, but I think Glasgow are in that pack of a few teams behind them that are dark horses to win it, because their form at Scotstoun is awesome. Their hands in really awful conditions are outstanding. The try for Kyle Rowe, just the depth and skill involved in passing the ball through about 5 pairs of hands from a line out, was it, or a scrum? I can't remember, but a set piece all the way across the field. They went back about 30 metres, but that's in order to get it to the outside, and they just gassed it in. Just lovely, lovely rugby. And offloads for the first try, it was Matt Fagerson to Hugh Jones, and then Hugh Jones to George Horn. And what about wee George Horn, by the way? A hat-trick from him, and his second try was try of the weekend so far for me. Absolutely outstanding individual brilliance and awareness to realise he was going to go into touch or be tackled, nudge the kick through to himself, to then actually manage to gather, keep his feet in field and put the ball down without touching the white line. Absolutely immense. And then Jamie Batty, just to show that it's the whole 15, the whole 23, the whole squad for Glasgow have got skills. Jamie Batty just with a little lift to George Horn for his hat-trick try as well. They look really, really good. And Sale are much better at home than away. They're now put themselves under pressure, though. To the final game, and it was Racing 92 beating Quins. This is a team that Quins have beaten a couple of times in the last few years, so Racing held no fears for Quins whatsoever. But Quins are not the same team that they were last year. They've lost Will Collier, their tight head prop. He should have been England's tight head prop for the last 5-10 years. He's now gone to France. Well, not 10 years, for the last few years. Will Collier should have been England's tight head prop, in my humble opinion. But now he's gone to France, so he can't be picked, and he wouldn't have been anyway, because I don't know. Don't know why Tom Willis isn't being picked over Alex Dombrandt. I don't know why Will Collier was never picked. Who knows? Anyway, one selection I will say that was a smart one is Stuart Lancaster not picking his son Dan Lancaster, who I hadn't heard of before this year either, and he picked Gilbert at fly half in the absence of Owen Farrell, and Racing looked much better as a consequence. And in the last 20 minutes, they actually realised, we can actually play some rugby. And when they did, their Fijians, Hobosi and Tuisova, among others, was it Natuvi as well with the try? that led to the try. Absolutely awesome rugby. But no, Quins are not the same. Will Collier was the one player, but the other one, Andre Esterhazen. They really, really miss him. They do not have that focal point. He's irreplaceable for them, and they just don't look the same team. He created the shape, and he was the foil for Marcus Smith. And it's going to be interesting to watch. Marcus Smith looked brilliant for England, but like he was trying to do everything himself and didn't really, I don't know. Marcus Smith is an incredible individual player. You can't just rely on individual brilliance to ultimately win games. You need a bit of structure and a bit of all the other stuff. And Andre Esterhazen was that guy for Harlequins. And yeah, they're missing him big time. Also, just in terms of the squad, the replacements for Quins did not add. But make no mistake, Stuart Lancaster is under serious pressure at Racing 92. They're not doing well in the top 14. He's been there a couple of years. From the outside, it looks like a bit of a basket case. So that win is massive for them. And that is your weekend so far. We've got 3 games left this weekend. We're going to settle down and watch them. We're going to light a fire, watch Bordeaux, who I've predicted to win by 20. I've predicted Toulouse to win by 27 against Ulster. Bordeaux play Leicester. And I've predicted Leinster to win by 14 points away from home. And I've just brain farted who they're playing. God, this has been a long weekend. It's been great being part of it, though. And what did you think about, if you're watching in the UK and Ireland, what did you think about the Premier Sport coverage? The team I worked with was absolutely brilliant yesterday. It was great. Jamie Roberts and Martin Bayfield. Great. Nick Heath. No, I've completely forgotten. Doesn't matter. You know already. It's been one of them. I spent a lot of time on the motorway. I spent a lot of time in motorway service stations, sheltering from the rain. And I'm going to be spending lots of time today watching the rugby and back here reporting on it with you. Give your comments down below. Give the video a thumbs up. Hit subscribe. I'll see you on the next one.